What is up, jabronis? JJ back here from Run Pure Bets. Another live show. Talk a little college football. It's been a while since we've talked a little college football, right? You get the break between, you get the Army-Navy game, but, depends how much you're into a snail fight. But now we have, some bowl games back, and it starts today with the Bahamas Bowl. After this show, I'll do an NFL show where I'll recap yesterday's game as well. I'll talk on a few of the Saturday games and the Sunday games. But this is meant to be. I'm going to talk on the game later tonight. I guess I could briefly talk on this game. It's about to start. And then, of course, I'll talk on tomorrow. So I'll have a few bets for you guys as well. If you're late to the video, I'll make sure I get the captions in for you, or as YouTube calls them, the chapters, so that it's easier for you to navigate through. But for now, it's live. Feel free to pop in, ask any questions, or don't. I don't give a shit. Just kidding. Scott, what's happening? So, what's up, B-Rad? So ultimately, so this game here, I will say this. The Bahamas Bowl is always a rather fun one because from a motivational standpoint, these kids get to go to the Bahamas, and it depends on the coaching staffs on how much these dudes can party it up or not. And I know that might sound silly, but like you take a bunch of kids that are in college and put them in the Bahamas. To be honest, before this game, it's whatever team's more disciplined. And of course, this game's early, so there's that narrative as well. And I know these aren't analytics narratives, but it's just true about the Bahamas Bowl. Like, if your coaching staff's going to let your kids go a little reckless, at the Atlantis, assuming that's where they are. I've been to the Bahamas 4 or 5 times, mostly before the age of 21, because you're able to gamble. You're able to gamble in the Bahamas at 18. So I used to go there before I went to Vegas. But yeah, look, it's fun. It's fun out there. So, from a motivational standpoint, which team is going to be more disciplined heading into this game? I'm not going to say likely wins, but you likely get the best version of them with your money. So just something to keep in mind. Now, I do have from a best bet perspective for later tonight, NIU and Coastal. So the troubling part with these with some of these games, right? And especially everything that's going on in the leagues. And it's not even just college, right? It's happening in the NFL. It's happening in NBA. It's happening in other sports. Also, COVID, right? It's becoming a big issue. And obviously it's been an issue. And I'm not going to go down the politically correct or incorrect avenue here. But ultimately, you need to be a little more cognizant that this is the reality, right? And you're going to make bets early, or you may make bets early that just aren't going to work out because of, late COVID scratches and people being ruled out. And, some of it's already happening in the NFL. And as it relates to bowl games, you're also going to get like people who potential draft picks that are just going to opt out. Some will opt out early. Some will opt out late. Some it's going to get to game day, and at the last minute, they're going to be like, we don't want to play, or I'm not going to play. And, it's why I gave credit to, if you guys remember Trevor Lawrence with Clemson last year. Like, he had COVID and he had no reason to come back. He was going to be the number 1 overall pick regardless. And he comes back to play when he didn't have to. And I kind of respected him a lot for it. Like he only, to be honest, he only had things to lose doing that. But look, I think you'll see a lot of players that are, especially guys that are like in that 2nd, 3rd round tier, that are likely not going to play. Your first rounders also likely, it's all motivation, right? Your first rounders are going to play if they feel like one big game could jump them a bit. But man, they get injured in that game, and that's going to be a lot of financial hit to them. So I hope college football kind of figures out the right way to do it. I don't really have that answer, but I hope they figure out the right way to do it so that, because at the end of the day, these bowl games are fun, and you want to see the best of the best from these teams. And some of these bowl games that I don't want to say don't matter, but they're not as important as the BCS. You see a lot of players opting out. Ultimately, you just kind of hope you get the best version of these teams in bowl games. And the problem is that you're just not gonna, with the way it works and the motivation standpoint and the amount of money that could be lost from these kids that are going to get drafted, which makes me respect even more the kids that actually do, because kids that actually do clearly love to play the game, and whether you get yourself a fat insurance policy before it or whatever. But either way, I know I'm kind of ranting on that, but just going to give you some heads up on how you approach these games and bet them from that perspective. So with that in mind, let's talk on Coastal and Northern Illinois. Now, what's this current line? Okay, so I bet this a little earlier in the week. 62.5 over. And I know this might seem like a fat number, but oof. I mean, so I kept this past 65, which makes 62.5 an auto fire. And I think you can find 63 or 63.5 regardless. For me, in these bowl games, some of the lines are tight, and a lot of it's assumption based, right? Because you assume certain players are going to play, and if some offensive guys opt out or aren't playing or are injured or get benched for whatever reason, it does impact things. But I'll tell you this much: Coastal Carolina, on a per play basis, one of the best offenses in D1. Now, sure, they play some of an easy schedule, and they've had some health issues throughout the year. And sure, maybe this is not the bowl game they envisioned when they came into the season with high aspirations after their big season last year. However, here's what I know about NIU. NIU is pound for pound one of the better offenses in the MAC. Okay, they play up tempo, but they don't play as fast as some teams in the MAC. With all that said, I think there's a spot here that makes a tremendous amount of sense for the over. Whether you go first half over and then full game or full game over, however you do it, to me it doesn't really matter. But I will say that Coastal should literally be able to go up and down the field against this team. Now, will those drives can result in touchdowns or field goals? I guess that's still to be determined during the game. But on the NIU side, look, I've liked Rocky Lombardi all year. I thought he's him coming from Michigan State. I thought he's put some life into this offense, especially of course in the passing game, and they run the ball effectively as well. And I think overall, like Coastal Carolina, for playing a soft schedule, their defense was nothing like it was last year. I mean, this has been a middle of the pack team in terms of yards per play. And when you evaluate this from all sides, it does make sense that Coastal Carolina it scores 35 or more here, at least. And it does make sense that Northern Illinois gets their fair share of points as well. Again, these types of totals, when they're this big for bowl games, it does rely on guys landing in the box. I get it. Coastal Carolina doesn't play fast, and Northern Illinois has been often more sped up by other teams. For me, this is a pure offensive efficiency play. I get two teams that play much better offense than defense. I get two that Coastal Carolina plays slow, but they also have played a lot of softer teams that slowed the game down. Northern Illinois doesn't play fast, like super fast, but they're not going to slow this game down. So I just think overall, you're looking at a spot where Coastal should have a tremendous amount of opportunities between running the football, between passing the football, moving the ball downfield. And Northern Illinois has a lot of big play caliber to them. And I just think over the course of the game, as long as Northern Illinois gets some of their points where it doesn't force a situation where Coastal Carolina is up 5 touchdowns late and they're just running the clock out. I think if this game stays within 3 scores throughout, I think it's a very good spot for the over, because I think, like I said, Coastal Carolina is going to just move up and down the field against this team. So, and Northern Illinois, who's played in the MAC all year, has played some decent defenses. Coastal Carolina's not going to show this team anything they haven't seen before. So, all that considered, yes, best bet over 62.5. I got that at FanDuel early in the week, and I'm looking here. That should be a consensus. Let me just pull up Sports, so I give you a real number. I don't want to feel like that guy that's giving you a number that doesn't exist. 62.5 definitely existed a few days ago, and I haven't seen this game get oversteamed, so I would think 62.5, maybe even better, still available. Let me take a quick peek. Where NCAAF? Yeah, 62.5 still available FanDuel, so we're good. 62.5 FanDuel, New Jersey, -110. Okay, so I guess we can roll right into tomorrow's slate. First matchup, Appalachian State, Western Kentucky. Yeah, believe it or not, this is actually going to be a best bet for me. Western Kentucky team total under 32.5. Again, did I get this at FanDuel? Let me just take a quick peek at my slip. FanDuel. Yes, 32.5 at FanDuel. Okay, so good there. I thought I might have bet that at DraftKings, but I did not. So yes, 32.5. Western Kentucky under. So it's a few different things here. For Rump Your Bets members, you know that I fired on UTSA's team total over when they played this team. The main reason for that was UTSA has been the beast of that conference all year. Western Kentucky had some late resurgence. Their offense has been incredible, and definitely behind a much fatter pass attack. Now, I believe Western Kentucky, this has been a good year for them, but I thought their best year, I don't know if you guys remember, was when Brandon Doughty was their quarterback. That dude was just slinging the ball all over the place. And this team is reminding me of that team a bit. And look, Bailey Zappi has been tremendous for them, like 5,500 yards or some shit, maybe a little more than that. I think it's 55 anyway. And App State has been a defense that's been proven they could get exposed against with the right passing attack. They've been very good versus the run. App State seemingly lost some big games this year. This is a down year for this App State program. And look, give credit to the Raging Cajuns because this kind of became their conference this year. And obviously their head coach leaves, and look, Louisiana's on this slate as well, so we'll talk about them later. But so here's what I think happens in this game. I think that it's been proven, this was just proven literally by UTSA last game, the perfect way to beat Western Kentucky is eating clock. Okay, App State plays good defense, and App State can force turnovers, and Zappi will turn the ball over. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to he's going to make decisions that aren't ideal, especially when he's throwing as much as he is. It's just inevitable. And App State should be able to take advantage of it. The idea that Western Kentucky needs 5 touchdowns here, I could be wrong. I think App State's given up this number once all year. And I think it was to the Raging Cajuns. Let me just confirm it. Yeah, so they gave up 41 this year to ULL, which was the most points they've given up all season. And the difference there is ULL has a pretty balanced attack. They can run the ball really well, and obviously they between Levi Lewis, they can still throw the ball, move the ball downfield that way. But with all that said, Western Kentucky has a lifeless run game. So you're going to be looking at a Western Kentucky team that's going to have to convert third and longs because they're going to throw a few incomplete passes, going to have third and longs. I could see a world where Western Kentucky has quite a few 3-and-outs here. And when App State has the ball, what are they going to do, right? They're going to run the football. And I know they have their Clemson transfer, Chase Bryce, who's been very up and down this year, a lot more down than up. So I don't like the idea. I mean, look, App State, this should be a spot where App State covers. I do think that. Covers the number under 3. But the problem is at 3, I don't necessarily want to lay a hook here with a team in Western Kentucky that could really get themselves out of a hole quickly. I get that. Look, Western Kentucky's had a great year, and I know this has been a down year, but relatively down year for App State. But I think that's why I'm getting that small number, and I value App State higher than Western Kentucky. And I just looked at this game from a bunch of different angles, and what makes the most sense is going under this number because, again, from a game script perspective, App State is going to eat clock in this spot. They're going to run the football. They're going to throw a lot of short passes. They're going to want to have long, sustained drives. Western Kentucky, yes, I know they average like 40 a game, but they don't play you look at who they've played. I mean, they've played a few decent defenses. Like they played Marshall. Like Marshall was the most impressive game I saw from them. And that game was weird. Like Marshall went up early, and then Grant Wells, I think, started turning the ball over, and they gave up like 50 points in the second half alone, or 48 points in the second half alone. It was just a weird game from them. And they give up, and then they score 41 against UTSA, most of which coming in garbage time. And I just think overall, App State does everything they can to slow this game down. And yeah, that's another best bet. Thanks, G-Sauce. Let me retype that. So JJ's best bet. So that's 62.5 over. Imagine G-Sauce. Imagine me typing in just best bet 62.5, not even mentioning the game, not even mentioning over under, just saying 62.5. LOL. So yes, thank you for posting that though. NIU versus Coastal over 62.5 FanDuel in New Jersey. So Ray, here's the thing, like under 33.5 minus 135. I mean, you know this better than most. 32.5, 33.5. I mean, really not a big difference, and certainly not worth the extra point. Now, I will say this: I'm pretty sure I got that at DraftKings. Now I'm going to look at my phone. I don't know why I keep thinking I got that at DraftKings. So FanDuel's 32.5. Let me see if FanDuel still has 32.5 for this game. Based on the line, this line still should be 32.5. Yeah, I mean they're letting me cash out for like 90% of the bet, which is normal if the line didn't move. So let me just make sure that it didn't. Totals. Western Kentucky. Yeah, so right now it's 32.5 minus 112, so it's a little more vague than it was, but okay, so all in all, yeah, I think, Ray, if you do have outs at FanDuel, I would use FanDuel. It's minus 112 there. So I would use that out if you have it, because I wouldn't I can't warrant paying 23 cents more from 32 to 33. I mean, I wouldn't pay 32 cents more to go to 35. I mean, I'd pay 32 cents more to go to 35 and a half. I wouldn't pay 30. So you get what I'm saying though, Ray. Okay, so let's move on to the next game. Next game is UTEP and Fresno. So total's 51 and a half. I will tell you this. Tomorrow's a difficult day for me. So in terms of me wanting to live bet, but this is a spot I would normally want to live bet. And it's a tough spot for me because I'm going to be in Atlantic City with my father. So, I'm not exactly going to be focused on watching these games and finding live spots. I haven't been to Atlantic City, believe it or not, since before COVID. So it'll be fun to kind of get back to the craps table and kind of throw them bones, if you will, especially being with him. I haven't seen him for the holidays. So it'll be nice to sync up, but I likely won't be invested in these games from a live perspective. With that said, this is a juicy spot for the over. I just wish I got in at 50 or 50 and a half before this moved. Fresno State plays up tempo and they will throw the ball all over anyone. And I think UTEP, who started the year very good, because they had a soft schedule. I think their defense is severely overrated. I think that UAB, who we were on UAB minus the 13 and a half or 14. I forgot the exact number. Either way, they won by 17 late. I've just seen this UTEP team give up a lot of points to good offenses. And yes, earlier in the year, you look who they played, right? New Mexico, they played BCU, the D2 school, Old Dominion, Southern Miss, Louisiana Tech, and FIU is not bad. But this defense has started to expose itself a bit down the stretch. And they're seeing a good offense here in Fresno, who is, yes, going to have their quarterback. I think he was going to transfer, but he ended up staying. At least for this game anyway. He's not going. I think the Fresno, is it? Am I right on this? I know I try to keep up with all the information, but I think the Fresno State coach went to Washington, and he was going to take the quarterback with him. I think I have the right school, right? You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Either way, he's staying, and UTEP's defense is very overrated. And I will say this, UTEP's offense, I believe is underrated. Like, I watch this team on offense, and I actually like what I see from this team, whether they're playing a good defense or not. I think this team kind of got some notoriety a bit for their defense. And when they started the year, 6-1 or 7-1, some shit like that. 6-1, I think. But I've liked this team's offense a lot more. And I know that UTEP plays kind of slow. Fresno plays pretty fast. And I just think that if this game plays out how it should, where Fresno goes up and it's going to force UTEP to play faster, I just think UTEP's offense is good. And this number at 50 and a half or 51 and a half, it's light. Now, the reason why I'm talking on betting it weighting is 51 and a half for totals is somewhat key. 52 is somewhat key. I would like this to be under 50 to target it live. So if you get like a few dry minutes in the first quarter, you can bet this over 49 and a half or over 48 and a half, something like that. To me, that's fireable, or fire-onable or bettable, if you will. Make it over here, making up words. But I can't stress this enough. Like, this spot where you have, two teams that have played relatively decent defense all year, this makes a lot of sense for the over. And these two teams haven't gotten to play good offenses in most of their games. And when they have, they've given up points. And even you take Fresno, for example, right? Like, yes, they play up tempo, and that ultimately results in them giving the other team more possessions, and they throw a lot, so it stops the clock. But like, who they played down the stretch? Like, they played Boise, who they let score 40 on them. New Mexico's one of the worst offenses in football. San Jose is one of the worst offenses in football. The Nevada drops 34 on them. San Diego State, whose offense is anemic, drops 30 on them. They shut out Wyoming, but again, Wyoming's offense is blah. To me, these two teams both have overrated defenses, and I think this total would be fair if the game played slow and the clock consistently kept running. But I think UTEP gets their points. I think Fresno gets their points. I just don't want to bet at the current number. So live spot, call it in that game if you want to target it. Again, you could bet it pre, but I personally did not. UAB BYU, interesting, right? You got some COVID, not some COVID news, but you got some draft folks that are out. And what do you make of it all, right? So what do you? From my understanding, UAB's star running back will not play. BYU's star defensive end will not play. probably a few others as well. Makes this game difficult to like any side. There's also the motivation standpoint here. I'm not sure how much you guys buy into this or not, but from a motivation standpoint, I promise you, this is not the game BYU wanted to have. BYU, especially with them being ranked 13th in the country, this team had New Year's Six bowl aspirations. And, clearly they're not going to be in one. And, you look at their schedule and they have some decent wins, but, it's like, to me, the BYU situation is a Cincinnati situation, just, a few more losses on the BYU end. BYU, so I'm also going to go into this with Notre Dame. So Notre Dame has their own level of issues, right? Like Notre Dame, what's it called? At least Notre Dame schedules good preseason, right? So they have a bunch of names that usually are good, right? And look at BYU's schedule. It's like, who do they even really schedule against? I mean, a lot of in conference games, anything out of conference with relevancy, they lost. Their only good win was Utah, which was earlier in the year. And, I don't know, like you look at teams now and it's really how you're playing down the stretch and the way BYU's schedule worked. They had a lot of their easier games at the end of the year. So yeah, it's tough to say how good this team truly is. And maybe they deserved a better bowl game than this, but it goes back to that, right? So how happy do you think BYU is to be in this game? If I was on BYU, this wasn't the game I wanted. So, it makes it tough from, how much does BYU really want to make a statement here? Maybe they do, maybe they want to make a statement, but even if they won by 40 here, it's not like, the committee's going to come out and apologize for not putting them in a better bowl game. UAB's been another team where, they haven't had the defense that they did last year, but their offense improved, but now they're missing their best offensive guy. BYU, if they're not going to be able to get pressure, that's going to be a bit of a concern, especially with that missing their big D lineman. Weather here might be a factor as well. It might be raining. I don't know about the wind, but it might be an ugly game in that respect. This game is very difficult to cap based on the news that's out. So overall, it will be a stay away spot for me. But should be a fun game to watch. Assuming that BYU wants to be in the game. But yeah, I guess from a motivation standpoint, maybe some value on UAB. Maybe I'm not in love with the play though. That's why I didn't bet it. But okay, let's talk on that game. So Liberty, Eastern Michigan. Now, Malik Willis, yes, has opted to play in this game. And to me, that says a lot. Like, he had a pretty tough stretch down this season towards the end. His team lost, I think they lost 3 in a row. Let me just check. Yeah, so they lost 3 in a row. He looked god-awful against Army. Good news for him is he'll see a worse defense here in Eastern Michigan. To me, this is a very fun spot, all things considered. And this is going to be another best bet from my end. Over 58. Hold on. That's what I got. Let me just make sure that's. You see what I do, guys? I don't look at just the bets I've made. I look at what's in the market. I'm not saying no one else does that, but I just want to make sure I give you guys numbers that exist. 58's available at FanDuel still. Over. And for me, the reason why I like it over, with Malik Willis playing in this game, how he's trying to improve his draft stock. This offense is not going to stop itself in this game. Malik Willis potentially has a lot of money to be made in this game because there's no quarterback that's seemingly going to be drafted in the top 10 right now. And there are teams that will be drafting inside the top 10 that do need quarterbacks. So if you're a guy like Malik Willis, this is one of your last chances outside of like some level of a combine of sorts or a pro day to jump your own draft stock. Eastern Michigan, who plays in the MAC, is not a very good defense at all. Liberty should be able to move through this defense like a hot knife through butter. And if Malik Willis I would expect Malik Willis to show off all his talents, running and throwing. He's done some questionable things this year. Like he's, to his credit, he's trying to throw the football more. If you've watched a lot of his games, I'm sure Liberty fans have. He's trying to throw the football more. He's not running as much. These opportunities that do end up presenting themselves. It's so weird. Like, I remember the Army game. There was multiple times where I'm looking at it. He's got like 10, 15 yards in front of him. He's choosing to throw a jump ball up in between double coverage. So his decision-making hasn't been great. But look, I like Hugh Freeze, and I like this offense, and I think that they perform out here. And as for Eastern Michigan, again, another team from the MAC, another team that plays better offense than defense, a team that's been like a bit of an underrated team this year, right? Like they haven't lost a lot of games by more than 7. I think they've lost like if you include 8, I guess they've lost 3 games total, I think by 8 or more. And that was Wisconsin, Ohio, and Central Michigan. This team's offense, led by Ben Bryant, hasn't been as good recently, but he still gives them a nice dynamic there. And they don't run the ball effectively great either, or really good either, but they have good weapons in the passing game. And I think they're going to be able to score against Liberty. From an athlete's perspective, Liberty is definitely the better team here from a lot of fronts. But again, Eastern Michigan wants to shoot out with teams. They're not a team that wants to play low scoring, and Liberty will score with anybody. So I just think 58 is a little low here. I kept this up past 62. It's probably my favorite bet of the day tomorrow. I mean, it is. So yeah, I just think there's points in this one. And when you talk about motivation, Liberty's got a ton of motivation to put up points in this one. When you talk about Malik Willis and Liberty wanting to have him leave on a high note, I mean, think about what it could mean for this program if Malik Willis goes in the top 10. Quarterback from Liberty is a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. So, maybe a little extra pressure there on Liberty's end as well. But Eastern Michigan's defense is woof. Again, another game where weather might not be ideal, but it's going to be warm, which matters. So I think overall it's a good spot to back the Flames to score points. Eastern Michigan likely does enough to hang around to keep scoring with them. So yes, over 58, got that FanDuel, New Jersey. All right, so 2 more games left. We'll type that in here. JJ's best bet. Best bet. Liberty, EMU over 58. That's at FanDuel. Okay. Pitt, Michigan State under 52. No Pickett or Walker. No Marco. Good JJ. Okay, good. Thanks, Twatty. And look, I can't disagree with that at all. I mean, it's kind of crazy that the 2 best offensive players from that game opt out. One from each team. So you would think that game does play slow, but ultimately, it'd be interesting, right? I mean, I think that you're probably, and to your point, Twatty too, you're probably just going to see that total continue to come down. What it'll close at, I don't know, but it will continue to come down. So moving over to Utah State, Oregon State. Let's give a little credit, first of all, to Blake Anderson. I liked what I saw from him in Arkansas State. He comes here, and in his first year in this program, 10-3 in the Mountain West, first place. Good for them. And they absolutely blister San Diego State in the Mountain West battle. A lot of credit to Blake Anderson. It is pretty clear that Blake Anderson will be coaching at a Power 5 school sooner rather than later, especially if he has another good year or 2 here. He is going to grab himself a good job at a Power 5 school. He plays these up-tempo offenses. He always has a stud wide receiver in his systems. They don't run the ball that much, but he's usually got a smart quarterback that's a bit mobile. And it is hard not to like what's been seen from this offense. And even surprisingly, their defense. Now, the problem for them, there's a lot of different matchups they could have had. This is a terrible matchup for Utah State. And not terrible in the sense that I think that they're going to get rolled. Terrible in the sense of, I felt like if they played a bunch of these other teams in this spot, they would have likely not only been favored, but I would have pounded them as a small underdog. The problem is Oregon State at 7-5 is one of the most underrated teams in the country. And this team's offense, lack of a better word, fucks. This team is super well balanced, led by Chance Nolan. They run the ball extremely effectively. And all things considered, when you look at who Oregon State's played and who they've even lost to, they've lost some games they shouldn't have. But, man, they score every time they're out here. And Utah State's had a good defense in the Mountain West. But this would be – I'm just trying to see. Did they play Boise? They did play Boise earlier in the year. This Oregon State team is going to be one of the best offenses they've seen all year. And Utah State will speed this Oregon State team up. Now, this total's moved up, but it makes sense why it's moved up, right? Like, Utah State's going to speed this team up. This total should never been 62.5. And 67.5. So I do like this over, but this will be another spot where I'd kind of want to either get it live or even target Oregon State's team total. The only issue with me targeting Oregon State's team total is I think it's 37.5. If Utah State's offense, for whatever reason, has issues with this Oregon State defense, which is hard to believe, but if they do, Oregon State's motivation to put up 40 here is not going to be there. So with that said, I do think Oregon State is in a very good spot here. However, Utah State has been so good this year, which has deterred me from there. And they've been really good offensively. They've been really underrated defensively. The other thing is to me, this is a BYU effect. Like Oregon State, maybe they haven't been in too many bowl games, but this has been a good offense this year, and they deserve a good bowl game. And I'd argue they got a good one with this Utah State team, but they might not think this is a good bowl game for them. But man, these offenses should really show out. I hate that I missed the number by 4 or 5 points here. And I'll be honest, like with these college football games, I used to 3-4 years ago. I used to always bet these early, before all this players opting out for draft nonsense, and now obviously COVID's in the mix, and players just sitting for random reasons as well. It's made things more difficult to cap from these bowl games. Now you could argue certain players don't really matter all that much, and just fire. But ultimately, it's been tough, and obviously you wait, you're going to miss your opportunity to get good numbers, and I missed a good number here. But yeah, the offenses should shine here. Utah State is going to fly up and down the field, and Oregon State is not exactly a team that plays relatively slow, and they are very content to do whatever they need to do, obviously to score points. And that's the one thing they've done really well this year. And Utah State has also moved the ball really well this year. The issue with Utah State as well has been red zone. They have not been good in the red zone by any means. That's been apparent, and they've been better throughout the year as the year's gone on. But again, a lot of credit to Blake Anderson, a lot of credit to what this program's done. And this is also, look, an Oregon State team sneaking into a bowl game as well is good. I just think this team's one of the most underrated teams on D1. I'd argue both these two teams are two of the most underrated teams in D1. And them getting matched up against each other is not really fun from my perspective. But I do think there's going to be a lot of points in this one. Just a matter of if it gets over the late number of 67.5. But I do think it's a great live over spot if you get a slow start, nervous start from some of these teams. Jay, do you know much on UAB defense? I've been cashing out to your rush yards. So I will say this, B-Rad, when I went to cap UAB versus who did they play in their last game? UAB played I think they played UTEP. UAB's offense is extremely efficient. They play slow, but their offense is extremely efficient. On the defensive end, this has been a down year versus last year, but that's saying a lot, because they had like a really good defense last year, like really good. This year it's good, but it's definitely taken a bit of a back turn. As for BYU, I think that there's opportunity there for BYU to run the football. But again, the game plan BYU comes out with, who knows? UAB is going to want to slow this game down. BYU may want to speed it up. But regardless, though, with BYU, that they're going to do all they can to score points in whatever best way they can. I think UAB is super susceptible against the run and super susceptible against the pass, especially since, again, I think they've been a bit overrated this year defensively, especially if how much you weighted your priors before the year on UAB, which were pretty high on the defensive end. So the short answer is I don't mind it at all. I don't know what his number is going to be, but if it's anything in the 75-ish area, I don't mind it. But I could be wrong. I haven't followed BYU to a T this year. I thought they used multiple heads at running back, which does add a little bit of complexity to it, right? Assuming they're using multiple heads at running back, let me just see real quick. I know Algier gets a lot of snaps. Okay, so if I'm making this line, B-Rad, I'm probably making it myself like 85.5-ish, 86.5. I would think if you get any smaller number than that, it's worth pounding the over. I think higher than that, like if they post at like 90, 91, which they might. I mean, the dude's averaged over 100 yards a game. But this is UAB, a better defense than maybe BYU's been often accustomed to seeing. I think the holes will be there. I think the number matters. I think anything south of 85 is worth a fire on over. I think, and to that point, I think anything over 100 is worth a fire on under. So, use that as best you can, be right. All right, so let's talk the last game. Marshall and Louisiana. Now, speaking of teams that have had a bounce back year defensively in a negative fashion, the Thundering Herd, Marshall, his defense last year was incredible. Incredible. This year, not as much. Now, granted, they've played good defense. They have by no means played great defense, though. In Western Kentucky, I don't even know how to explain what happened in the second half of that game. They had shut out Western Kentucky, and then an offensive show happened in the second half of Western Kentucky. I've seen this Marshall team against good offenses give up a lot of chunk plays. And I think there's also some question marks on whether or not Grant Wells will play in this game, which matters. And I don't know when you're going to get that official information. Maybe it's already there. Like maybe you guys know about it or don't. But from what I've seen, he's like questionable, or he may not even play. He doesn't play. Look, I'm not a Grant Wells guy. I don't think he's been very good. I think with the offensive line he's had and some of the outside weapons he's had, I think he's been tremendously inaccurate far too often. And not to say that he can't improve or can't, find a way to play on Sundays one day. But I think that he has good enough talent around him to have better numbers than he has ultimately. And it's a bit alarming, how this offense doesn't run as well as it does. Not even just running the football. I mean, just from an efficiency standpoint. So I think that on the Marshall side of things, it is tough to imagine they will slow down this Raging Cajuns team. But the Raging Cajuns coach is now coaching Florida. So he will be there for this game, though. Yes. But, is it more of a, just committing to the players kind of thing? Is he looking past this game? What do you make of the whole coaching? Because he's also taken a few guys with him to Florida. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure he wants to go out on a high note. But, for me, from a motivation standpoint, this is more motivation for Marshall. I'll be honest, this is a great bowl game for Marshall. Marshall hasn't had a down year, and they draw this game. Like, I'll be honest, like Louisiana, to me, should have gotten a team like Oregon State or Utah State. Like, Utah State would have been an awesome game for them to get here. But, the R&L Carriers, the New Orleans Bowl, this is how they match up, right? So with these conferences, and I guess that's where it all falls. But from a spread perspective, I think it's very difficult. I don't think you can bet this game until you know the status of Grant Wells. I think if you know Grant Wells is playing, I think there is a lot of value on the +5. If he doesn't play, I'd lay all the way up past 7.5 with Louisiana. So you got to wait for that news. Louisiana Raging Cajuns likely get a bunch of their players in. I don't think they have many people that opt out of this game. Same thing with Marshall outside of like a Grant Wells. So yeah, I think this is a tough game. Is the line down to 5 now? I know it was line down to 4 now. I know it was 5 earlier in the week. So it's down to 4 now. So the fact that it's trending down to me tells me maybe you might get a Grant Wells start here. And if you do get the Grant Wells start, I think that there's a tremendous amount of value on Marshall. I think Marshall's super live to win this game if Grant Wells plays, because I think a lot of things fell right for Louisiana this year. Not to say they didn't play well or didn't have a great season, but they had a lot of games that were losable games that they won late by a small number. And I think that Marshall here is going to be a team that falls into that category. I mean, the Raging Cajuns, I think, I'm looking up here, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, they won 7 games by 1 possession. So, this team's played a lot of close games. This could be a totally different season for this team if they lost one more game. And I know, sure, if the queen had 2 nuts, it'd be a king. But I think that at the end of the day, I have the Raging Cajuns a bit overrated, and I have the Marshall Thunder and Herd a bit overrated. So it makes it tough. But I do think there's some value on Marshall here once Grant Wells plays, because I do think Marshall's live to win outright in this game. And I guess, time will tell on the Grant Wells situation, but just something to keep in mind when you go to play this game. Also, some people might like this. Might think this is an under spot because the Raging Cajuns have played good defense all year, and Marshall's played decent defense all year. This is another spot where I hate to sound like a broken record, and you guys should know by now, I prefer unders. This is a decent over spot. And I think that maybe you can even get more isolated where you target like a Grant Wells team, a Marshall team total over if Grant Wells plays. So just some kind of food for thought there. But I think overall, Marshall's aside if Grant Wells is playing. If he doesn't, I'd be good with the Raging Cajuns all the way up through 7.5. With this recent spread movement, it does look like Grant Wells will end up playing, which is good for Marshall. Okay, that wraps it up. I gave you guys 2 bets, gave you guys some live spots for you guys to even potentially look at or look into. I hope you guys enjoy this bowl game the rest of the way out, this MTSU Toledo game. And look, from here, I will probably about 5-10 minutes more. I'm going to fire off my NFL show. Well, I'll go through the NFL games as well. So I hope you found this video informative. I'm going to write up the notes on this game so that people can get it by chapters. So maybe figure 1 o'clock will be the time I start the NFL game on schedule, NFL video on schedule, where I'll go through all those. But again, as always, folks, gamble responsibly. Head over to runpurebets.com, see what we're all about. Use code BETS25 off. Get all our picks for all weekend long in college football, NFL. And look, college basketball is right around the corner. Usually right after the BCS, so right after the New Year's 6, or BCS is on New Year's Eve and the New Year's 6. So right after the New Year's 6 is right when I begin capping college basketball. I thought about doing it a little earlier this year, but I don't want to change up what I usually do. This is how I usually operate. I don't I don't cap college basketball until the New Year's 6 is over, until after the New Year's college football game. So Then I'll start to cap college basketball, and I'll cap that with football. And then, like I said, but then you'll be in the middle of January where I can start handicapping tennis again because you have the Australian Open. As you guys know by now, I only really like to handicap 2 sports at a time. I don't really like to handicap 3. I think you muddy the water when you start doing that. Not to say you can't win in short samples, but if you're a guy doing it alone, I think it's very difficult. Don't get me wrong. If you're in a syndicate or you're part of a bunch of guys that are all responsible for their own lane, sure. But as one guy, I think it's very difficult, especially if you're analytics driven, to cap multiple sports at the same time. Just my 2 cents. But other than that, as always, folks, gamble responsibly. Got another game later tonight at 6, which I gave you a play-in. Gave you 2 plays for tomorrow. And I'll see you guys back in 15 minutes talking NFL. All right, gamble responsibly, stay safe, run pure. See you again soon.